I got a clean bill of health from my doctor, and 2 weeks later had my first heart attack.
You're listening to the Begin Within Health Show with Nate Slager. For more, go to beginwithin.fit/podcast, or to enroll right now in our flagship coaching program, go to beginwithin.fit/coaching. Hey there, welcome back to the Begin Within Health Show. I'm thrilled you're here. As always, my guest today is Belden Colme. He's a speaker, he's an author, he's a mentor. He's also the founder of a company called Nutritional Fitness. I think you're going to enjoy my interview with Belden Colme. Here's a few things that I want you to listen for as we go through this conversation. Just three things. You know my style. I like three things to focus on as we go through. Prepare your mind for what you're about to hear. Here they are. First of all, the body is chemistry. We're going to talk a little bit of science, chemistry, things that honestly, on a day-to-day basis, I don't think a whole lot about. And you probably don't either. But my guest does. And he's going to share that with us. He's also going to explain how understanding a bit of the chemistry that is going on inside our bodies and understanding that our bodies are constantly performing these chemical reactions helps us to make better decisions with food. So listen, when we talk chemistry, we're going to talk about the 4 jars diet. That's Belden's approach, very simple approach to eating in a way that gets you the right nutrients and the right balance. And then we are going to talk about breaking food addiction. We're going to talk just a bit about that, but I think that's a very powerful part of our conversation, and one that I have a feeling is going to resonate with a lot of those that listen to this show. Here is my interview with Belden Colme.
I got a clean bill of health from my doctor, and 2 weeks later had my first heart attack. And it woke me up to a lot of things. One is the fact that a lot of people get clean bills of health, but it's not because we're healthy. It's because they got us drugged up on all of the stuff that makes the symptoms look better than they really are, if you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
So my blood pressure is artificially held down. My cholesterol is artificially held down. Hey, dude, you're great. Keep doing what you're doing. 2 weeks later, I'm in the ER. I actually woke up staring at the underside of my cabinets, wondering where I was, hearing voices, but couldn't really tell what they were saying. Starting to become aware I was all wired up and didn't know why, until I got into the hospital and it all started to make sense. And I started to get some clarity. But that was my first heart attack. And I came home from that in a state of just feeling broken and dejected and kind of hopeless, because I'd been gaining weight all this time, and it wasn't because I wasn't trying to get rid of it. Right? I was trying to do all the things to get healthy that you're supposed to, and here I'm sick anyway. When I had my second heart attack, I came home, and I remember really, really clearly the day that turned everything around for me. I was staring into a cup of coffee, and the blackness of that coffee reminded me of my life, right? It's just like the black abyss. It doesn't get any
Oh
worse than
man,
this.
I'm never gonna
And
look
I
at
was
coffee the same now.
no doubt. But I'm sitting there looking at my coffee, wondering what I'm going to do. And I had no idea at all, except I had this one thought. And I think it was the engineer in me. My past 25 years was in the building industry.
Okay.
And the engineer in me was kind of poking its head up and saying, if I could learn how my body worked, maybe, just maybe I could work with it. And I had kind of a fundamental belief that the body heals itself, that the body is made to do that. So I took all of my resources, all of my time. I actually sold my building company earlier because I was never going to be able to do it again. And just took all of my research skills and brought it to bear on that one thing. And two things I knew right away. I didn't want to study medicine because my doctor was telling me I had 5 years, maybe a little more if I was a good boy, right? I didn't want to learn that. And I also didn't want to study nutrition because my nutritionist was an overweight diabetic. And I didn't want to learn that either. And so I went for the only thing that made any sense, and that was cellular biology and biochem, because then I could learn how it all works. And it didn't take very long, Nate, before the pieces started fitting together and I could see how to support my body. And I started doing it right away with what I had learned, but I continued to learn and continued to apply. And once I started on that path of turning that around, of actually taking action on it, I'd reversed my type 2 diabetes in 3 months. I'd lost 105 pounds in 5.5 months. And by the end of 2 years, my heart disease was gone. I'm never going to forget the day that my cardiologist took me off my last medication. I was on 21 at one point in time, 21 medications. And on the very last one, he said, Belden, I don't want to take you off of this because I don't trust what you did. And I'm like, all right, let's look at this a different way. Okay. If I came in here today for the very first time and you've never seen me before, is there anything in me that would make you prescribe this medicine? And he said, no, there's not. And I said, cool. If anything changes, you tell me to go back on it, I will, but let's just try it. Let's just get rid of it. That was a little over 18 years ago now. And I've been disease free for that 18 years, never gained the pounds back, not because I never had challenges, but because I knew what to do and I'd gone down that path. So today I call that the 4 jars diet. And I give that to everybody because the world has a right to know how to get their body healthy and they deserve the opportunity.
Nice. Wow. Yeah, I mean, I want to dig into that if you're willing.
Yeah, definitely.
The question that I guess came up as I was listening for me was you said early on you started, as you're studying the cell and biochemistry, things started to click and you started to learn some lessons you could implement right away. Um, do you remember what some of those lessons were? Like what were
Oh,
some of the
definitely.
ahas?
Yeah, definitely. One of the very first things I learned is what metabolism is and what metabolism does. I had always heard, just like everybody else, that your metabolism is a fat burning furnace. And that's kind of as far as I'd ever learned anything about the metabolism. And when you get into studying the body and cells and how they work, you realize that the metabolism is the reason life exists. It's the most beautiful, magnificent piece of engineering you can possibly imagine. And it does everything it does with two main functions. And it's funny because if you Google metabolism, you'll get billions of hits on the fat burning furnace,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Rev your
But if
metabolism.
you
Yeah.
look up, yeah, you look up these two words, you'll get something completely different, and it'll be your education on what it does. The first word is catabolism, C-A-T, abolism. Catabolism is the destructive side of metabolism. It takes things apart. And the other side of metabolism is anabolism, A-N-abolism. And that's the constructive side of metabolism. It puts things together. For example, catabolism takes your food apart into its smallest usable pieces. Anabolism puts your food back together into the cells of your body. And when I read that, I'm like, what? Doesn't it just burn everything you eat? Everything you eat is just burned up as energy. You got all these macros that burn at different rates, and right? It's
Mhm.
putting it into the cells of your body. But it's funny because it was a faceplant moment. It was, we're rebuilding about 1.5 billion cells in your body every single day. Where does the raw materials for all of that work come from? Because it doesn't absorb out of our sheets at night, right?
Mhm.
It comes from the food that we eat. And that was such a wake up moment for me because I was a home builder. If we have bad wood full of bugs, full of mold, I'll burn that stuff all day. We used to have bonfires on the job site to get rid of the old lumber, go out there with the hot dogs and marshmallows, right? You'll burn that stuff all day, but are you going to put it into a house and use it for building material? No. And so I started looking at food differently because if we're not burning food for energy, if it's actually being taken apart and reconstructed into the cells of our body, do I really want to use that? Do I still want to use that same garbage? So it started changing the way I thought right away. The second thing I learned was what energy really is in the body. We've got a molecule called adenosine triphosphate. We call it ATP for short. And this molecule lives in your cells. It doesn't come from your food. It lives in your cells. You've got as much energy right now. In fact, you have more because you have 3 times more cells as you had when you were 10. Let that sink in a little bit because most of us remember the energy we had at 10. That energy lives in you and it's still there. And this molecule works by blowing up when it gets wet. Blows up, releases energy, the mitochondria grabs it, uses that energy, and then there's a chemical process that we call the Krebs cycle that puts the broken pieces of that molecule back together to give you energy again. And again, it was a faceplant moment. It's like, you're telling me that all this calorie counting and all this stuff that I've been doing to get energy from my food, energy comes from this molecule called ATP and works completely different than anything I had ever been told before. And the other thing I learned there is that this isn't unique to people. This energy process is exactly the same in every living thing. Person, plant, animal, amoeba, fungi. Energy works exactly the same thing in every living thing that we're aware of today. And it's like, wow, nothing, I mean, nothing that I ever learned and believed was true. Nothing. So as I started learning that and getting deeper into biochemistry, which is a little more complex, I'll be honest with you, organic chemistry is not a lot of fun to pass. I'm pretty sure that the entire field of engineering exists for people that flunked out of organic chemistry. But it does all come down to three simple concepts. And one is that every chemistry, and we are chemistry, right? If I were to ask you, everything happening in here is a series of chemical reactions and responses. Is that true? We are chemistry. And chemistry boils down to just these three things. You have to get the right things in the beaker to get the reaction that you want. Kind of a no-brainer, right? You have to keep the wrong things out of the beaker because they'll pollute that reaction and it won't happen right. And you have to get the right balance of things in the beaker because the recipe matters. If you're baking a cake and you decide to get things backwards, you're going to be dyslexic today, put in 2 cups of salt and a tablespoon of sugar. You're not going to have a very good cake, right? The balance of chemistry matters. So right things in, wrong things out, and right balance. And again, what had I been told my entire life? I've been told you can have cheat days where you put anything in the beaker that you want to. I've been told that everything is a matter of, dosing. The dose is in the poison. You can have anything that you want as long as it's just a little bit. And I've been told all of these things about how to put food in my body. And now I'm realizing we are chemistry. Chemistry has laws. If we follow those laws, amazing things happen. We don't follow those laws, less than amazing things happen. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow. I didn't have a heart attack because of what I ate that week. I had a heart attack because of what I've been eating for 35 years. But sooner or later, it's going to catch up with us and bad things are going to happen. So once again, it's like a very, very simple concept. And that's what I dug into to create the 4 Jars diet, was how do I take all the complexities of getting our chemistry right and make it easy, make it simple so that somebody could eat the right things, not eat the wrong things, get the right balance without having to be a biochemist.
Yeah.
Right. So I did it by visualizing 4 jars. And if we break food down into those 4 different groups, which doesn't remotely resemble the food plate, but if we break food down into these 4 groups, which I visualize as 4 jars, we just take the right amount out of each one of these jars every day. We're there. You've got everything in the beaker that you need to have in the beaker. You've kept the wrong stuff out and you have the right balance, just that easy. And that's been the basis of the work I've been doing from then until now.
Nice. I love it. Very nice. Let's talk about the jars. Is that okay?
Yeah, please.
Mind digging in? Tell us what's in the jars.
Sure, sure. And actually, if you go to my website too, I'm going to tell you right now where you can get this and you can just download it for free. If you go to my website, beldencolme.net, the link is in the 3rd paragraph of the homepage. Grab it. It's free. It doesn't require anything of you. Just take it. But the 4 jars break down like this. The first jar is 85% of the building blocks that a human body needs. And here I'm saying burning blocks, not fuel. Some of your food does go into this chemical reaction, yes, but most of it is your building blocks. 85% of those exist in dark leafy greens. So that's a jar all by itself. Dark leafy greens, any kind of green leafy edible plant goes in that jar, no matter what it is, from dandelions to kale to you name it.
Okay.
The second jar is fibrous vegetables. These are the things that leave strings in your mouth when you chew them up. And it's important to think of them this way because the fast food industry, the big food, big pharma wants you to believe you can take a fiber pill that grows like a sponge in your body and that's going to do the job. No. The thing that creates gut health is the fibrous vegetables, the strings in your mouth that clean you out when they go through your body. These are things like broccoli, snap peas, string beans. You know the things. You chew them up and still got that wad of fiber in your mouth. We need to have those every single day. And we're learning more and more and more. And I know you've heard this on the news at an increasing rate, how important gut health is to everything else in your body, even your mental health.
Yeah.
Depends upon having a healthy gut. And this is the jar that does that. Then your other two jars are things that need to be balanced together carefully. One of those jars is your non-processed carbohydrates. Now, think in terms of processed and non-processed. Don't think in terms of simple and complex.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Simple and complex were actually terms invented, believe it or not. Truth is stranger than fiction. These were created on the floor of the Senate in 1973 to help pass a farm bill.
Nice.
And in terms of the real world, they just don't mean anything. But factory processed carbohydrates have had the good stuff removed from them, all kinds of additives packed into them, and they're not at all going to serve your body in any healthy way. Unprocessed carbohydrates. And what I mean by unprocessed is not factory processed, right? I'm not saying raw, I'm not saying you can't cook them,
Mm-hmm.
but non-factory processed. Non-processed carbohydrates. And then the final jar is the same thing with proteins, non-processed proteins. Factory processed proteins like your pepperonis and your sausages and all these things, again, they're treated in a way that's not healthful and they have so many additives in them and make your head spin. But non-processed carbohydrates and proteins, and these two, it's really important that they be kept in balance because they need each other in your body when they're processed and used by your body. So it's super important to keep those. But if you eat from those four jars every day, dark leafy greens, fibrous vegetables, non-processed carbohydrates, non-processed proteins, this is going to give you the right things into your body. First rule of chemistry. The second rule of chemistry, how do you keep the wrong things out of the jar? Well, that's easy. If it can't exist without a factory, don't put it in your body. And that kind of makes sense, right? If it cannot exist without a factory, just don't put it in there. And then how do you get the right balance? And that's what we do when we work with people, because while a healthy body chemistry is pretty much the same for everybody, minor differences for man or woman and for age, but those are minor differences. Where people are starting from today is massively different. We have clients come in that are like I was on 21 drugs
Mm-hmm.
that we're trying to counteract with food in order to get your body chemistry right so that you can get rid of the drugs. So when people come in, the balance might be different, the recipe might be different, but we're moving everybody to what the healthy body chemistry is that's going to serve them for the rest of their life. And the benefit for that, man, not only did I reverse 2 chronic diseases, lose 105 pounds, but when I was going through the doctor stuff, I lost weight too, but I never felt better. I always felt
Interesting.
drug out and shot. When
Yeah.
I started eating this way, it took very little time. We're talking just a few weeks. And my energy came up in a way I literally hadn't felt since I was a teenager. And I've had that from then until now. And I'm pushing 60 now, and it's never failed me.
Oh, that's awesome. As you were going through the process, was it like flipping a switch? Like once you learned it, boom, I'm good to go, or was incorporating it, making it part of your lifestyle, a slow process? How did that work? And the reason I'm asking, Belden, is
Yeah.
I'm curious on what you recommend for for the average person that is, you know, your client to be someday. How do you recommend that they start incorporating the 4 jars
Yeah.
and making those
And those
changes?
are a little bit two different questions because I was learning as I went, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Every time I learned something, I applied it, I incorporated it, and I grew on what I was doing for myself. So it was a slower process for me. But when I have clients come in, we give people the 4 jars and we teach them the food right away. because the food isn't that tough. I mean, we laid it out in what, 3 minutes?
Hmm.
The food isn't that tough. And when we get people going down the food, things happen really, really quickly. For our clients with diabetes, blood sugars start dropping immediately. We're talking in the second or third day, they start coming down, and most people are within normal blood sugar range in just a matter of 4 or 5 weeks. When we're working with heart disease, there's a lot more repair the body has to do, so it takes a little bit longer. That's probably going to take between a year or two, just like it did with me. And the weight starts dropping really, really quick too. The energy takes 2 or 3 weeks. I make the big bodacious promise when I get a new client, you are going to feel an energy shift in 10 to 14 days. Days.
Hmm.
And I wouldn't be in business if I couldn't make that come true. You make a promise like that and don't hold up on it, you don't last very long. 10 to 14 days. Now, that doesn't mean you have all of your energy back like a kid all at once, but it does mean you're going to feel the shift. And over the next 2 to 3 months, it's going to constantly ramp up until you're like my PA. My PA was a client before she became my PA and a friend of the family, but she called me up one night at 10:30 at night. She's like, Belden, 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 Belden. I feel so good. I'm putting up all these decorations for the party. They had some party coming up. I'm putting up all these decorations. I'm like, that's awesome. Why are you calling me at 10:30 at
Yeah.
night? And she's like, because I didn't even know it was 10:30 at night. She's like, I can just go and go and go. Now, when she started, she was crashing every day at 2 in the afternoon. She was done, absolutely done. And she's like, this is so cool. And I'm like, yeah, that's how your body's supposed to work. It is pretty cool. Now hang up.
Yeah. Go to sleep.
But yeah, we always get started on the food very, very quickly because the
Okay.
thing is, the slower you move into the food, the more impossible it's going to be
Mm,
because you cannot be just a little bit addicted to something. If you're
mm,
addicted to processed foods and you don't stop those processed foods, you're never going to stop those processed foods because the addiction is always going to keep you going back down the rabbit hole over and over and over again. The only way to break an addiction, and don't let anybody tell you differently, alcohol, tobacco, food, doesn't matter. The only way to break an addiction is to stop it and take control of it. So we
mm.
do that right away. And then the support, the ongoing support to keep it up and make it sustainable and make it long term and all the strategies and things you have to do to make that happen. That's what we're going to work with over the next 6 months
Gotcha. I love that message. I like that a lot. The only way to break it is to stop it.
is to break
You
it.
gotta stop.
Yeah.
Wow.
There's an old there's an old Bob Newhart episode, probably goes way beyond your time. Bob
I
Newhart's
watched
back in,
Bob Newhart, probably reruns, but I've seen him. Yeah.
there you go. He's got one called Stop It, where he's a therapist and somebody comes into his office and they're like, how do I do this? And he's like, well, do you enjoy doing it? And she's like, no. And he said, then stop it. And she said, but, and he said, stop it. And she said, but, and he said, stop it. Because that's the only way to make it happen. It really is.
Nice. Yeah. No, I love the message, like I said. Now you are an author as well.
Mhm.
And I think could you just catch me up on what's coming or on your latest book?
Yeah.
What's the latest from Belden Colme that will help us?
Absolutely. On Amazon right now, you can pick up a copy of No One Ever Got Fat from Calories. And a lot of what we've been talking about here is in that book. This is what your metabolism is and how it works in more depth than
Nice.
we've been talking here, what energy is and how it works, what food's doing in your body, what lies we're being told by marketers, and how marketers are actually manipulating us. It's a simple process called classical conditioning. We have Ivan Pavlov and his dogs to thank for it. It is super easy to make people want food at any trigger, just like Pavlov's dogs got hungry at the sound of a bell. And food companies have gotten really adept through marketing of applying classical conditioning to us to get us to buy more of their
Yeah.
products. So this book lays out how to recognize it, how to stop being influenced by it, and even how to use it on yourself to create positive habits that
Nice.
you want to create. We talk about the different kinds of body fat in there, right on through to how to make these four categories of food, how to make the four jars work for you is
Nice.
all in that book. Soon to be released in the next 2 to 3 months is Undo Type 2, how to kick the diabetes habit for good. And then later on in this year or early spring, it's going to come Four Dimensions to Success and Everything, where we're going to talk about the inner voices, the self-sabotaging,
Nice.
and how to break that so that you don't. When you get the voices in your head talking on the same page, pushing you the same direction, you're unstoppable. When you have the voices in your head arguing, you're always going to cave eventually
You're gonna
to the
lose.
dark
Yeah.
ones. Yeah. So this is all about how to get those voices on the same page and get your inner body, mind, and spirit aligned and working together so that you literally are just unstoppable.
Well, I like as you outline them how they're fitting together. You know, it's not like, oh, we have to revise what we said before. Let's do 2.0. These are it's a series. It sounds like that's gonna fill
Mhm.
in and pick up where the last one left off. I like that a lot. That's awesome.
Absolutely.
Thank you for your work.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Nice.
I love the media doctors. Today I'm vegan, tomorrow I'm paleo. I'm like, yeah, you don't have to worry about this here. We're
Yeah.
we're getting it right, and we're following or taking people down that path.
Yeah. Awesome. Good. And what's the best place for people to go to dig deeper with you, your work, your company, and connect with you?
Yeah, there's two great ways to do it. One, well, three, if you count going to Amazon and picking up a copy of my book. One is to go to beldencolme.net. And then you're going to go there and you're going to wonder, how do I spell this and where do I go? An easier way is followthelitrabbit.com.
Okay. Got it. We'll have a link. I'll have a link to your website for sure in the show notes. So awesome. Belden Colme, thank you so much for being here. We appreciate
You
you
bet,
being here.
Nate. I've enjoyed it.
All right. Such a great interview. Again, you can check out Belden's work at beldencolme.net. The links are in the show notes to follow him and connect up with him. So thanks again, Belden, for being on the show. Now, for the rest of us, those three things that I asked you to listen for. First of all, the body is chemistry. Second of all, the four jars approach to eating. And then the third piece about food addiction. Um, that was interesting, wasn't it? His point about you can't really be a little bit addicted. If you truly have an addiction, the only way is to go with none of that thing that is causing problems for you. I think that is, again, it's something that may resonate. It might resonate with you. I know that it resonated with me because my approach always is balance. Have some fun once in a while, have some fun things once in a while. And that helps us to feel healthy. It helps us to celebrate a little bit, enjoy flavors, enjoy different foods. But I think it bears a little bit of serious thought to acknowledge that there may be, and there definitely are, some powerfully addictive aspects to food. And there may be certain foods or certain situations that we need to avoid completely if we are going to be the healthiest versions of ourselves. So I think that one, just that idea, we can't be a little bit addicted, that's one that's going to definitely stick with me. But the action step that I want to leave you with is around that concept of understanding the chemistry that's going on inside our bodies a little bit better, and the fact that it helps us to make better decisions. After listening to this interview in this episode, what I want to ask of you is, what comes up for you? If there was just one better decision that you're going to make moving forward, what might it be? in view of all that we talked about today, what might that decision be? What might that change be? Just one different action going forward with better respect and better understanding of how your body works and how food is influencing the way that your body works. What is it? What's that one thing that you would do differently? And I want you to put some real intention behind it. When are you going to do that different thing? What do you need in order to commit more fully to doing that different thing in order to move forward? What is that different decision? I'd love to hear about it. You can share it with me on social media at Nate Slager and tell me how it goes. Tell me how the different decision goes for you. There's a few episodes that I want to encourage you to listen back to on the Begin Within Health show if this episode really resonated with you. And in particular, a couple of these have to do with food addiction or eating disorders. Okay. I'm going to send you back all the way to episode 28, my interview with Marissa Evans. What is disordered eating? That was a question that we answered on that interview. So check that one out, episode 28. Just after that, I never really realized that these were so close together, but episode 30 with Dr. Charles Smith, Are You Really Addicted? We talked about what addiction is in that interview. And then finally, talking about chemicals and nutrition, my interview with Frank Davis, episode 143, is very interesting. There, we answered the question, is your nutrition really nutritious? And in particular, taking a look at some of the supplements and other things that we use and analyzing those. Is this really helping me? Is this really something that is making me healthier or not? So check those other episodes out. I want to thank you so much for being here, for listening all the way to the end or watching all the way to the end of the episode, and for subscribing or following the show and sharing it with somebody that you care about. I appreciate you so much for sharing a bit of your time and attention with me. Please keep taking good care of yourself. I'll talk with you again soon.